right, I'm going to try this again. Didn't work the first time because the window was wrong, but I've had a great day. Been exercising a lot. Actually went out for a walk too, and it's springtime, and I do have to get back to something I do on this channel, which is provide information, especially for the 2020 election. So today we're going to do Bernie Sanders. Reason I didn't do a video much earlier was because I think he announced his candidacy at the beginning of February, and originally I was trying to go in the order of candidates announcing their candidacy, and I guess it's been a while since he did. I've done a number of other videos on him. I'll try, in the first take, it didn't necessarily work, and there were a number of other problems, but I'll try to limit my opinions to the end. So here we go. So he was born in 1941 in Brooklyn. He has a brother, older brother, who's still a politician in England, moved there. He's a Green Party councilman in Oxfordshire. And then he's also cited his major influence that drove him towards, the politics that he has, which is left-wing socialism, despite what anybody might say about him being a social democrat. So he followed Eugene Debs as an inspiration, he was the Socialist Party for candidate, I think 3 or 4 times. He attended James Madison High School and Brooklyn College, and then the University of Chicago, where he earned a poli-sci degree. Then he joined the Council on Racial Equality in 1962. They've since been, one of the more moderate civil rights organizations, so they've been dramatically overshadowed. But he was also part of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. That's the same organization that Stokely Carmichael came out of. And the SNCC was pretty active in trying to organize voting in the South, voting among black voters. Then in '64, he went to Israel to join the Kibbutz Sha'ar HaMakim, but he didn't last long there, so he later moved to Vermont, and then he applied for conscientious objector status during the Vietnam War. So by that time, I think from the sources that I saw, he already was out of the range of years, so he was like beyond the draft already, so it didn't really matter. But I think that people who want to use it against him that he dodged the draft, you have to remember there were a couple people who didn't dodge the draft who were complete and total idiots. You could see, for example, John Kerry, who won the Democratic nomination in 2004, was a horrible candidate and would have made a horrible president. By the way, he also voted for the Iraq War. And then there was John McCain, much the same reason, just different party affiliation. And then there were some other people, Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut, who claimed that he was in Vietnam but wasn't. So, yeah, I mean, would I have been a conscientious objector? I think if I would have grown up in the Vietnam era, I probably would not have put as much thought into it, and I would have been, drafted out of, just sheer laziness to actually do anything. And yeah, I probably would have died somewhere. But yeah, I guess I don't hold it against him. He helped found the Liberty Union Party in Vermont in 1970 with Peter Diamondstone and a number of other activists. He quit the party in 1977, and the Liberty Union Party has since labeled him a war criminal. You can see one of their campaign posters is at the bottom there, with a unicorn turtle charging at a 2-headed beast, the donkey and the elephant with a money tie. Very American. Of course, they had to come up with an imaginary animal to be their symbol. But yeah, they're a pacifist party. They're a democratic socialist. They're also for nonviolence and stuff like that. So you'd have to respect them for consistency. He ran for U.S. Senate two times for the Liberty Union Party. He lost the second time to the guy who's the other senator for Vermont now, Patrick Leahy. So if you think about it, Vermont has 2 super old candidates, super old senators, one of whom has been senator for almost 50 years for Vermont. So that's how progressive of a state it is. 2 guys who have been they're old white guys that have been in politics since the 70s, yet they're called a progressive state, whatever. And obviously, if you want to hear more about Vermont politics, you could probably tune into Styx Hexenhammer, who is probably the top YouTuber, in my opinion, for news and analysis. He also ran for governor 2 times for the Liberty Union Party. And then he was elected mayor of Burlington in 1981. He was reelected 3 times to 2-year terms. Then he ran in 1988 for the at-large district for the House of Representatives for Vermont. He lost the first time to Pete Smith, the Republican, but then he won in 1990, defeating the same person. So his career in the House was, there were some things that I respected him for. He eliminated the payoffs for layoffs policy. And if you don't know what that means, in the 90s, when some of these defense contractors started to have, obviously less business, they started to lay off workers and consolidate. And the government was actually giving them, they were giving them, I guess, corporate aid or welfare, as I would call it, when they would lay off workers and transfer their operations to other states during mergers and stuff like that. I think it was Lockheed Martin was the key example that he cited, and it's cited in his book Outsider in the House, which is featured at the bottom right, which is a book that I did read. And you should probably read it too. It's a very interesting memoir, in my opinion. He also opposed the repeal of Glass-Steagall, which I'm not exactly sure if I would have supported keeping Glass-Steagall or not. I think that many progressives blame the housing bubble and the economic crisis of 2007 to 2008 on repealing Glass-Steagall. In reality, there were a number of features of similar legislation from that period that helped saddle these major banks and financial institutions with toxic loans. And many of them were in order to facilitate lower income housing buyers to be able to get loans when in reality they had no credit. And in many cases, they weren't able to actually pay back their loans. And that's really what I believe created the crisis of 2007 to 2008. And I know this from firsthand because my mom actually was one of those lower income earners that was, speculating on the housing market for a few years. And then, eventually those loans went toxic and she lost almost everything and kind of, she went into a pretty dark period for her. The Brady Bill, he also opposed that, which probably does not earn him many friends in the gun control groups. He supported, however, the Violence Against Women Act in 1994. 1994. I know it's Sanders, but it was 1994 as part of the Clinton crime bill. This included the assault weapons ban. So that would be a strike against him for people who are NRA supporters and, gun rights activists and stuff like that. In 2005, Sanders also supported the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act that opposed holding gun manufacturers liable for shooting deaths. But he's changed. He's since announced that he's changed his views on that. Now we're going to go into some of his beliefs, his political positions. Here he is on immigration.
Something that is in what you said about being a democratic socialist is a more international view. But I think if you take global poverty that seriously, it leads you to conclusions that in the US are considered out of political bounds. Things like sharply raising the level of immigration we permit, even up to a level of open borders, about sharply increasing
open borders.
Foreign aid.
Open borders. That's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, I mean that's a right-wing proposal, which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot
me.
of global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe in a nation state, or in a country called the United States, or UK, or Denmark, or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people. What right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that. I think we have to raise wages in this country. I think we have to do everything that we can to create the millions of jobs. You know what youth unemployment in the United States of America today? If you're white, a white kid, high school graduate, 33%, a Hispanic, 36%, African American, 51%. You think we should open the borders and bring in a lot of low-wage workers? Or do you think maybe we should try to get jobs for those kids? So I think from a moral responsibility, we've got to work with the rest of the industrialized world to address the problems of international poverty, but you don't do that by making people in this country even poorer.
So, you know, in the interest of time, I'm going to cut that one short. And also there was another, these videos, I'll try to share the link to this. You know, it kind of screwed up one of my previous ones, but yes, Bernie Sanders also filibustered the tax cuts, you know, extending them in 2011, I believe. Those are the Bush era tax cuts. I think eventually that did get extended. You can watch that. That's a Young Turks video. But he also advocated on behalf of a new amendment to overturn Citizens United versus FEC in 2010. I think that that is a position that could earn support, not just among Democrats and progressives, but among a lot of other people who do believe that money in politics is kind of poisoning the well, and you know the average citizen doesn't have as much of a voice as a powerful corporation or you know an oligarch of whatever persuasion. He also supported auditing the Fed in 2016, something that I fully support because I'm a Rand Paul supporter. He opposed the Tax Relief Act of 2010 that extended the Bush tax cuts under Obama. That, again, is the video over here. Here it is, the 2016 candidacy where he went up against Martin O'Malley and Hillary Clinton.
Look, it's fine to talk about all of these things, and I'm glad we're talking about these things, but I've actually done them. We passed comprehensive gun safety legislation, not by looking at the pollings or looking at what the polls said. We actually did it. And Anderson, here tonight in our audience are two people that make this issue very, very real. Sandy and Lonnie Phillips are here from Colorado, and their daughter, Jessie, was one of those who lost their lives in that awful mass shooting in Aurora. Now, to try to transform their grief, they went to court, where sometimes progress does happen when you file in court. But in this case, you want to talk about a rigged game, Senator? The game was rigged. A man had sold 4,000 rounds of military ammunition to this person that killed their daughter, riddled her body with 5 bullets, and he didn't even ask where it was going. And not only did their case get thrown out of court, they were slapped with $200,000 in court fees because of the way that the NRA gets its way in our Congress, and we take a back seat. It's time to stand up and pass comprehensive gun safety legislation as a nation.
Senator Sanders, I want you to be able to respond. 30 seconds.
So you can see there, if you notice, Jim Webb, who's sitting to the, he's standing to the left of Sanders, also wanted to respond. I don't think he ever got to. This was a horrible primary 2016 where really Clinton and Sanders got all the TV time. Sanders didn't get nearly enough himself. If you were being fair, which, you know, I hope you're trying to be too, just as much as I am. But Jim Webb and Lincoln Chafee, who's a clown, but still he was a candidate, as well as Martin O'Malley, they barely got any time either.
I think the governor gave a...
So you know, to put a finer point on that, Jim Webb was a representative of a you know, kind of the business Democrats, but also, so, you know, he'd been a veteran for many, many years. I think he was a Vietnam vet. He'd served in the Senate, extremely against the Iraq War, more of a principled anti-war but pro-business Democrat. He got totally ignored in the primary, and you know, I think it's plausible that this year Webb could end up endorsing, you know, either Gabbard or Donald Trump.
Very good example about the weaknesses in that law, and I think we have to take another look at it. But here is the point, Governor. We can raise our voices, but I come from a rural state, and the views on gun control in rural states are different than in urban states, whether we like it or not. Our job is to bring people together around strong, common sense gun legislation. I think there is a vast majority in this country who want to do the right thing, and I intend to lead the country in bringing
Senator,
our people together
Senator,
on that
excuse
issue.
me. Senator, it was not about rural. Senator, it was not about rural and urban.
Exactly about
Have you ever
rural.
been to the Eastern Shore? Have you ever been to Western Maryland? We were able to pass this and still respect the hunting traditions of people who live in our rural areas. And we did it,
Governor,
Anderson, by leading with principle, not by pandering to the NRA
Well,
and
as
backing
somebody who
down
has
to
a
the
D-minus
NRA.
voting record,
And I have an F for
I don't
the
think I
NRA,
am pandering, but you have not been in the United States Congress.
Well, maybe
and when
that's
you
a
want
healthy
to
thing.
check it out, and if you think that we can simply go forward and pass something tomorrow without bringing people together, you are surely
Let me bring
mistaken.
in somebody who has a.
So yeah, that was it could have been a more interesting debate if they would have been allowed to go longer on this. And sometimes I think some of these debates should be more free structured or whatever. The ultimate goal was to keep people from actually discussing these issues. And I'll kind of go deeper into that hopefully towards the end today.
Do you believe that Secretary Clinton has the judgment to be president?
Well, I've known Secretary Clinton, how long? 25 years. We worked together in the Senate, and I said that in response to the kind of attacks we were getting from the Clinton campaign. Washington Post headline says, Clinton campaign says Sanders is unqualified, and that's what the surrogates were saying. Does Secretary Clinton have the experience and the intelligence to be a president? Of course she does. But I do question her judgment. I question a judgment which voted for the war in Iraq, the worst foreign policy blunder in the history of this country, voted for virtually every disastrous trade agreement, which cost us millions of decent paying jobs, and I question her judgment about running super PACs, which are collecting tens of millions of dollars from special interests, including $15 million from Wall Street. I don't believe that that is the kind of judgment we need to be the kind of president we need.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, it is true that now that the spotlight is pretty bright here in New York, some things have been said, and Senator Sanders did call me unqualified. I've been called a lot of things in my life. That was a first. And then he did say that he had to question my judgment. Well, the people of New York voted for me twice to be their senator from New York. And President Obama trusted my judgment enough to ask me to be Secretary of State for the United States. So, look, we have disagreements on policy. There's no doubt about it. But if you go and read, which I hope all of you will before Tuesday, Senator Sanders' long interview with the New York Daily News, talk about judgment and talk about the kinds of problems he had answering questions about even his core issue, breaking up the banks. When asked, he could not explain how that would be done. And when asked about a number of foreign policy issues, he could not answer about Afghanistan, about Israel, about counterterrorism, except to say if he'd had some paper in front of him, maybe he could. I think you need to have the judgment on day one to be both president and commander-in-chief.
Yeah, that was a clip that kind of it illustrated the real flaws of that race, which were that, Sanders, yes, he did bring up some great points in terms of trade, in terms of her record as a warmonger, which Hillary Clinton was, but he didn't have that killer instinct to really go after her on all of the issues, her corruption, Haiti, the emails, Benghazi, the regime change in Libya, all of the pay for play in the State Department, things that, if you really think about it, why really pretend that is an issue that only conservatives in America care about? I think plenty of people of all political persuasions wanted Hillary Clinton to be brought to account for the way that her career basically betrayed all the principles that, you know, progressives stand for, all the issues that a lot of liberals stand for. And, you know, certainly if you're a conservative or if you're a libertarian, you know, I'm a little bit more of a libertarian. We don't believe that our State Department should be used basically as a clearinghouse for somebody's personal business. But Bernie Sanders basically ignored that. And in a different clip, he said, "I'm tired of hearing about your damn emails." And that was, I believe, a major tactical mistake during the campaign that could have earned him a little more of an edge.